Hey guys, I got another chess video for you. This is a game I played on Yahoo against Gutierrezcortina, who was rated 1666. At the time I was rated 1350, so he's got a good 300 points on me. So we're going to go and see how this game went. I'm going to start playing against much higher rated opponents than myself in order to analyze the games afterwards and really see where I went wrong, just to improve my game as much and as fast as that I can. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump right into this game. Oops, sorry about that. I went ahead and I played my bird's opening f4. He brought in his c5. I brought in my knight. He brought in his d pawn. I brought in my c3 knight. He moved his g pawn, probably getting ready to fianchetto his bishop. I decided to do the same. He moves in his knight. I fianchetto. He does the same thing. Then I go knight to d5. Now if he goes ahead and he takes this knight here, which is undefended, I can take the bishop. Rook's going to have to move. I'll just move the bishop back, and then he can, if he wants to, take back on this pawn. But I wasn't worried about that because now I have the bishop pair and he can't castle kingside, so I wasn't too worried about that. Oh, and just so you know, since he was such a much higher rated opponent than myself, my plan was to trade off as many pieces as I can and go straight into the endgame. I feel like I have a fairly good grasp of endgame material, and that was my plan. So, oops, sorry about that. So instead of taking, he went ahead and castled, so now I have to deal with this undefended knight. I just decided to take. He took back with the bishop. I took again. Now he has doubled pawns on the f-file, but notice that his king is not exactly safe because he has to have a defender to keep this pawn strong, and he has a weak square on h6, which might become an issue later. So I open up a line for my bishop. He brings in his queen to b6, which I think is a bad move because b3 is played, so he can't take the b pawn. And I'm not sure of what play he really has over here on the queen side. So I ignored it. I just played my bishop to c4, getting it active, stopping the c5 pawn from advancing. He brought in his knight. I advanced to a3. He moved his knight to attack my bishop. And yet again, I want to start trading pieces, so I just moved to e2, protecting the bishop. He went and traded, and I was fine with that. And see, this is why I thought b6 was bad, because now he has to reroute it. He sees no play on this side of the board, and he has to get his queen active elsewhere in the game. I move my queen to attack the undefended f6 pawn. He advances b5, and I went ahead and took on that pawn. And then he played h6. I think he was afraid of me bringing in my knight to g5 and doing some kind of mating net over here. But I really didn't see any kind of forced mate or anything. But he was just being precautious, so he played h6. I pushed my d pawn. I want to start trading off these pawns. I don't want him to march it down and mess up anything too much on this side, because I do actually want to castle to the queen side. But I don't want to do it now and then have the pawns get messed up and me regret it later. So I'm not going to castle until I'm much more clear as to how the board is looking. So he moved in his rook to attack the backward e-pawn, and I'm already up a pawn, so I'm not worried about giving that pawn back. So I decided to swap on c5. He took back with the queen. I castled queenside, and I thought he was going to take this pawn with the rook, and I did not see him taking it with the queen, which is what he did, which was good because now I got to move the queen away, my king away, I'm sorry. And then I saw a decent tactic where I could get my knight very, very strong. So I went ahead, and after he played e6, then I saw a tactic with my knight. So I decided to swap the queens on d4 if he so wished. I definitely wanted to get rid of this queen. It's very powerful. It's kind of centralized in my side of the board, so it's attacking a lot of squares. I wanted to get that out of there. And he did take. I took back with the knight, and now look, my knight is attacking his rook and his b5 pawn. His rook cannot protect that pawn, so I'm going to win it after he moves the rook. I take the pawn, and now I'm threatening to win a pawn on d6, which forks his rook and his bishop, and if he tries to protect that somehow, I also have a threat of moving my knight to c7, forking his rooks. So now he has a very tough decision to make, and he kind of overlooked it. He played d7 with the bishop, where I can take on this pawn on d6, but then he can just move his rook away. And I think he thought that I was going to take this pawn, just winning a pawn, and then he can move the rook away. And he completely overlooked the fork. He moved the rook, I took the a rook. Then he played a good move. He played bishop f5, which attacks this pawn. So if I played some silly move like a4, he can come in and fork with the bishop, with the king and the rook. I have to move the king away. My rook, I'm forced to take back with the rook because this knight actually can't escape, because c7 is guarded by the rook and b6 is guarded by the pawn. So I'm going to have to take back with the rook. Takes. And now it's actually even and completely immaterial. I mean, I guess I could take on this pawn to be up a pawn, but it gives him a much, much better position if I let him do that. So let's go back. Oops, sorry, I went too far. So, I mean, I saw this tactic, and I simply just played rook to d2, which protects my c-pawn. And then he moved his pawn down the board, trying to get more pressure on this pawn, but it really doesn't do anything. I moved my rook to the e-file. He pushed his pawn. Then I doubled the rooks on the second rank. And when he played to d3, he saw how much of a waste this was, because I just simply won the pawn back. Not back, but I just won the pawn. So now he saw that his plan didn't bear any fruit, and he took back on the knight. So now I'm up 2 pawns and a rook against a bishop. So I moved my rook to the 7th rank. He moved his a-pawn out of the way. I pushed my a-pawn. He moved his rook, threatening to take on d3. I just moved my king away. I'm up a lot of material. I'm not worried about him taking on d3. But I didn't want him to take with the bishop, checking my king and forcing me to move away, and then he could do a discovery with the rook, maybe he could move his bishop away or something silly. Actually, no, he can't, because I can just take it. But I didn't want that anyway, so I just played king b2. And he didn't take the d-pawn. He moved a d4. I just connected my pawns on this side of the board. This light squared bishop can't do anything against these pawns, so I decided to just connect, and they're going to be safe for a long time. He moved in his king to attack my rook. I moved my rook to attack his a-pawn, and then he actually lost the game. This move actually lost him the game because he was being defensive and defending this pawn, but allowed me to pin the bishop to the king, and the king is not fast enough to get to a protective square protecting the bishop. So he has to protect with his rook, and then my rook gives him 2 attackers on the bishop. So now he's in trouble. He played king to e7, and that's a good move, and I'll show you why. Because let's say he just played some random move. I take the bishop, and now the pins to the king. So the king is going to have to move, and then on the rook. So he salvaged his rook by playing to king to e7, because after I took the bishop, he just moved the rook away, and he gained a pawn, which is fine, because I got these 2 pawns against this 1 pawn over here, and I'm up with an entire rook. So I took the pawn, and now I'm clearly winning here. And he decided to give me a check on by moving his rook, and he was planning on taking this h-pawn after my king moves, but that doesn't work because my rook can just protect. He moved his rook away, and I just start marching my pawns down. He moves his king, I march my pawn down, moves his king, march my pawn down. And I thought this was an interesting move. He pins my pawn to my rook, which is a good move, But after I give him a check, he's forced to move the king, and then I just move the pawn. So now I'm going to queen the pawn if he doesn't do anything. So he gives me a check, and I just move away, protecting my a4 pawn in case something happens to the b pawn. He moves in his king, but it's for no good. My rook on the c file is preventing him from moving anywhere. I moved my a pawn to attack his rook. He moved his rook, and then after c8, there's absolutely nothing he can do to stop my pawn from queening, and my opponent decided to resign.